Oh, I got my yerba mate. We're gonna change the name, it's gonna keep calling it yerba mate, but they.
Call to order. We're gonna go ahead and stand up and do the pledge of allegiance and then stay standing for the territorial land acknowledgement. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Stay standing, please.
I will be reading. Land Acknowledgement, Santa Rosa City Schools. I acknowledge that Santa Rosa City Schools is on the traditional territory and homelands of the Pomo people, traditional territory and homelands of the Coast Miwok people, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. This land acknowledgement calls us to commit to continuing to learn how to be better stewards of the land we inhabit. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold Santa Rosa City Schools more accountable to the needs of American Indian and Indigenous peoples.
Good job. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming to our student services workshop. The next item is going to be public comment on agenda items only. So we'll take public comment. We'll do 3 minutes for public comment. But it's only for items that are on the agenda, which is the student services workshop, Bellflower Middle School and High School visit, and the MTSS framework guiding coalition campaign.
We have one blue card. If you'd like to stand just at the back there, our speaker is Chris Ackerman. We have 3 minutes on the timer, which is not up here, but Marlon is speaking time.
Hi, my name is Chris Ackerman. I'm a teacher at CCLA, and as of July 1st, I will be Vice President of Santa Rosa Teachers Association. I am here to talk directly to President Caston and anybody who is responsible for making the agendas. Having a special board meeting for a discussion item that could have been a meeting in the fall is abhorrent. We have, in this last week of school, it is chaos in the lives of teachers. Involuntary transfers aren't happening until Thursday. Most of them are part-time positions, and teachers will be needing to pick from several different sites to cobble together a full-time position. Admin are stressed because sections have been cut, and we know we're going to need more sections in the fall, and we're not getting that, which means it's going to be chaos all throughout the summer when we try to keep going. So admin have been redoing master schedules since January. SRTA has collectively said that if you need us to do a 1.2 right now, sure, not a problem. We are team players. But we have told you you have cut too much. We have told you that the section cuts are not realistic and we have not been listened to. And so in the fall, if you ask us for a 1.2, we will say no. And so you will end up with subs in classrooms. This is an entire, in addition, you said at the last official board meeting, don't worry, we're going to approve the charter. But if you were going to approve the charter as is, why couldn't you do that during the school year? Instead, you're waiting to make that decision until after the school year ends. Are you trying to hide something from the students, the teachers, and the community? All of this needs to be figured out
About 30 seconds.
before we sit here and we talk about the things we want to do. Because teachers can't do more until we feel safe and we know what we're currently going to do.
There are no other groups.
All right. And we're gonna move to item C, discussion, which is near student services workshop, and you don't have it presenting.
Sorry, just a second here. I'm trying to get to where I can display. All right,
Introduce.
so yes, as we got into here, sorry, not that I'm better. First, I'm today. My apologies. Yeah, I'm gonna pull up there. So we have a workshop today that we are going to be spending about, well, 2 hours total, about 50 minutes probably for presentation and discussion on each topic. So we do have, the first topic is the Bellflower Middle and High School visit presentation. So wanted to start with just a quick introduction to the topic, and then we'll hand it over to our team that's here. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I appreciate our teachers who are participating, as well as our site leadership at services. So thank you. I do understand the impact on the time of year and really appreciate it. Just wanted to share that this was of the 7 through 12 redesign, started with a promise last year that we would identify school that would be, at least in one visit that would be something that we could model or use as an example of something that was similar to our size. So just wanted to share that and thank our teams for heading that way. Also to share our principals at a recap meeting yesterday. Very much appreciated, not only looking at what's been accomplished through this arranged marriage, they're now trying to blend families and move on with the work. And we would love to have a full presentation in the fall around the next steps and really where we are in keeping the work going forward. Go ahead and hand it over real quick to Dr. Castro to introduce our panel.
Thank you. I don't want to restate too much. Thank you, President Caspin, Superintendent, you members of the board and student staff and community of Santa Rosa City School. I really want to start first of all by acknowledging the staff and the school leaders and all of the individuals, the teachers that have worked so hard over the last year and a half, almost 2 years through this process. We had 2 phases and really thank them. I think all of the community of Santa Rosa City Schools are really seeing that they've demonstrated professionalism, flexibility and commitment while really navigating a significant change process. One that the first phase did not have an option of really going forward in May. We had something in the neighborhood of about 45 days to make this change. They embraced it in the service of students and did so in a really remarkable way. The work has been thoughtful, student-centered, and focused on making this transition as successful as possible. So I wanted to start by acknowledging that everyone that has been involved in the work, first and foremost. Pivoting then really quickly to what we're here to discuss, the Bellflower work, and then providing a little bit of context on how that fits into the larger secondary redesign. The visit to Bellflower, as Superintendent Hume mentioned, was an opportunity for us to meet the commitment that we had in looking for a district that had a 7-12 model in existence. It provided that phase 1 of our staff and schools an opportunity, and phase 2 leaders with an opportunity to observe a district that had been doing this successfully for some time, learn from their experiences and identify practices that may help to inform their own implementation moving forward. And then finally, I think it's important to understand that that one day was part of a larger secondary redesign that Santa Rosa City Schools is going through. We're moving through that phase 1 that happened really kind of out of an urgency to close a couple of schools. This phase 2, where we have 2 schools that are going to be merging into another 2 high schools. And then moving forward, as you know, we're going to be moving toward a district where we're really going to have a unique model, where we're going to have 7-12 sites across the board. And so this visit really is part of a larger secondary redesign process and working with the Learner Center Collaborative. We had the opportunity yesterday to have a wrap up, and I really wish that the board would have heard that. As principals reflected yesterday, The most important lessons they really learned on building unified school identity and culture, strengthening staff collaboration, improving student outcomes, and creating a seamless, supportive experience for students throughout their secondary years. So really, what we're discussing with respect to that visit is trying to pick up on what best practices are going to work for us in Santa Rosa City Schools, what we learned from that first phase, what we learned from this year, and what we can make the most of as we move forward, moving into a 7-12 district. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ashley. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Ashley Bell. I am a history teacher at Santa Rosa High School. And I'm starting off the talking because I made the slideshow. That's why. And then I'm gonna do my best to talk, not as much so that all of us can share our thoughts. The slideshow is organized into sort of 3 different parts. What we saw, what we think we should do, and then sort of more thoughts added on to it. We went down, the 4 high schools went down, excluding Recreo, and we went down for about 24 hours, a little bit more than 24 hours. We visited Bellflower Middle High School for about 2.5 hours. And so these are some of our big takeaways. I will preface this by saying that I've made this slideshow based on conversations that Santa Rosa High, Montgomery High, and Pioneer High had. Unfortunately, our LC Allen peers had to drive back, and so we didn't get to have lunch with them and debrief. So this is my version of what our conversation looked like. And I'm sure they can correct me where I missed or maybe I didn't communicate clearly. But I don't want to at all say that I'm speaking for LC Allen because they weren't part of that conversation and their takeaways might be different. Next, please. So we went to Bellflower Middle High School. These are sort of the big things that we noticed and the big things that I think that stood out to us as a team. They share an 8-period day, the 7th, 8th, and 9th, and 10th, all the way up. They all are on the same schedule. Which means that they can offer their students way more electives. Their middle schoolers were doing tons of electives and they were rotating through them and they were really passionate. They had flight class. It was really cool. And so they had a lot of offerings for middle schoolers because they moved to an 8-period day. They also had a lot of offerings for the high schoolers for that same reason. Adding periods gives more access to electives and other things for our English language learners and for our special education students. And so that model was working for them for those reasons. We also noticed that built into their day on Mondays, students don't arrive until 10 a.m. So 8:30 to 10 is when they have all their meetings. Faculty meetings, department meetings, any sort of collaboration between grade bands, whatever it is, it's built into the schedule. So their staff is leaving at the same time every single day. And they're not staying late for meetings because most of us stay late at our sites every day. So that was something that we noticed that we thought was nice. It also built in time for vertical alignment between the 7th grade and 8th grade and then the high school classes. That stood out to us. All department chairs have an 8th period prep, which means that they're able to meet and collaborate with each other. And they're also able to meet as a leadership team with the principal at the same time, also during the school day. So they had a lot of different places within the schedule where there was ways for them to collaborate with each other with basically everyone. We did notice and we did point out that the 7th and 8th grade only have intramural sports. Our 7th and 8th graders have more than that, which puts more pressures on our facilities than they had. So we noticed that. And then they also mentioned that when they first switched over to this 8-period day, they've been doing it for a couple of years. I want to say like 3 or 4, but someone can correct me. When they first started, the 7th and 8th graders took 6 out of 8 periods, but I guess that they were like getting into trouble at local stores. And so then the board changed the policy and had 7th and 8th graders doing a mandatory 8 periods. So they had a shift there. The teachers that I spoke to felt that 8 periods was a lot for the 7th and 8th graders. But that was just sort of anecdotal. And I don't know if that was a widespread feeling. That was just definitely the teachers that we spoke to. Their students all had support classes. They all had tons of electives. And I think for the site teams, that was really appealing to us as far as access and opportunity for students. Next, please. What we noticed, every site admin's jaw drops to the floor when their principal said that they get $1 million in title funds. We were shocked. We were blown away. We aren't actually that different when you look at the demographics of our districts. And our site teams are not receiving that level of title funds. What percentage they're receiving or where it's going, I can't answer that question, but I do know that our site admin teams are not receiving those title funds. The title funds at Bellflower are being used primarily to staff on site. So they had 5 admin. Every single admin had a secretary. Some admin had a secretary and a clerk. which meant that a lot of the administrative task type stuff was taken care of. So their admin team could focus on things that principals and vice principals are supposed to be focused on. They had an incredible amount of adults on campus. A lot of them were classified employees. And so those title funds were being used directly on site for site employees. And that really stood out to us. The campus was exceptionally clean. There was an adult around every corner. And that sort of calm cleanliness really, I think, made an impact on all of us. Because it was just impressive that that's how they focused their title funds. Their counselor ratio is 300-1. Ours is 400-1. Their admin ratio is 400-1. We're going into 700-1. When you think about it, I was thinking about this the other day as a side note. Santa Rosa Middle had 2 admin for about 400 kids. So Santa Rosa Middle was operating basically at a 200-1 ratio before they came to Santa Rosa High. We are now operating at a 700-1 ratio. So when we're talking about like the different experiences that middle school teachers are feeling and that lack of access that they have to site leadership, when you think about it in that context, that it was 200-1 and now it's 700-1, it's a really grave and really big difference. And it makes it really hard for site teams to collaborate because admin are just, frankly, super busy. There was about 80 classified employees. This is self-reported. So some of the numbers that I have listed here, especially on the next slide, are self-reported by Bellflower, and I couldn't necessarily verify them. Oh, they also had 5 security guards on campus, and they had 1 armed guard who was on the perimeter on a golf cart. They had really nice golf carts too, like super fancy. But they had 1 armed security guard on the outside. He did not come in. He was not allowed to come onto campus. But he was armed and he was on the exterior. Next slide, please. We visited Bellflower because it was supposed to be a comparable school district. So this slide was created in order for us to be able to see where we are very similar. And I think that there's some important things here. All the things that are underlined are linked to where the information is that I found it. So some of these things are self-reported. For example, when I would talk about district office administration, they self-reported that there was about 20 people. I could not confirm that. However, right, in the Press Democrat, they reported on October 19th, 2025, we had 44. So some of these things are a little bit harder to compare. However, there's some really interesting things. Our districts are comparable sizes about the students that we serve. We have a lot more schools than they have. That stands out just right away to me. We also have a much larger budget than they do. When you look at that, they have a larger budget, but they're seeing a lot more adults on campus, right? My personal opinion is that budgets are about priorities. $233 million is a lot of money, right? So it's not that we don't have a lot of money. It's just that sometimes we don't agree on how the money is being spent. The student population is very similar. Santa Rosa High is about 1,900 if you consider the middle school as well. They self-reported at 1911 when we were there, but their website said 2050, so I updated it to reflect that. We also listed the number of administrators they had, the number of certificated and classified, which you can see there's a really big gap, especially in the classified. You can also notice that all the pay is significantly different, right? So the vice principal pay starting is like $12,000 different. They don't have vice principals, they have assistants. So that's why those things are different. The classified employees, also the range is different, right? And when you look at a certificated, I chose BA plus 75 year 10 because that is me, right? And so if I worked at Bellflower, I'd be making $106,843 and working 1 more day. So I just wanted to include this so that you understand why we were sent there. If we wanted to look at a 712, we could have gone to Calistoga, but that's not a comparable size district. And so these are the places where it was similar. Next slide, please.
So actually on that last slide, the
Yes.
student population was only Santa Rosa High and then Bellflower.
I included Santa Rosa High because that's where I'm at and I felt most confident to talk about Santa Rosa High.
We're comparing student population for district.
So Bellflower, that's the 712 high school that we visited, or middle high school. So the site that we visited, that's how many students that they have at that site. And so I use Santa Rosa High School. They have 2 712s and 1 alt ed.
Their district is just under 10,000.
Okay, just trying to get it.
It's in the
Yeah.
high nine, it's in the high nines.
We have 1 school, right now we have 2 712, next year we're gonna have 4 712. So I'm trying to get.
Right, yeah, and that's why I wanted to include this, because I felt like when you're really thinking about how do we compare this and what's useful and like, how do we use this? I think we have to understand where we're similar and where we're different for any of the information that we're gonna share with you to be meaningful.
Right, Ashley, just to be clear, so they roughly are just below 10,000 students population for the entire district. They have 10 elementary schools. All elementary schools feed into 2 712s and 1 alternative high school that is 912.
All the elementary schools are there, not feeder.
All of the 10 are their elementary school.
Thank you.
in the population that they provided to us.
And just a note about the vice principal to assistant principal, the job duties are comparable, it's sort of the difference just in title. So there wasn't anything that assistant principals were doing at Bellflower that we don't have vice
Correct.
principals doing.
Which is why I felt confident and comfortable sharing that as a comparison, even though the titles are different, the scope of the job is incredibly similar.
Can I ask one clarification on that too, since we're talking about the principals and the vice principals, the ratios. They're, the number, sorry, where was it? Here, the 400 to 1 versus we're going to be 700 to 1 and they have the 400. Is that, was that including or excluding the principal?
They had
That's
4
including the
vice-
principal.
Yeah, those
And-
types.
and it's not
500 to 1
including-
we have right now is probably pretty comparable.
But they also have
Next year,
disciplinary
like a dean.
classified member, like deans. So classified certificated, certificated, not administrators, but they are like quasi administrators.
And then they also had extensive classified support. So at Santa Rosa High, for example, we have 1 secretary for all 5 of the site admin we have. There, they had 1 for each of them, plus a couple of them had clerks. So the staffing that is done to support the admin team was insane, in a good way.
Yeah, and I would even add that the staffing for the administrative, they had administrative assistants for each administrator, plus a clerk if needed for the principal, and I think the counseling AD.
That was one of them, yeah.
But then they also had full-time staff in each office. They had 2 classified staff members in the attendance office, the main office, the health office, and so forth. They were not included in the administrative assistant to the administration.
They also had a variety of TOSAs, like they had one that just pulls data and organizes the data for PLCs. So that didn't fall under site admin, like they might help facilitate the meetings, but they had somebody that was specifically in charge of organizing and providing like data so that they could use it for their professional development.
Next slide, please. So this is the takeaways that the team had. And again, unfortunately, we didn't have the opportunity to talk with Elsie about it, so they might have different takeaways. I don't want to speak for them, but when we had lunch, we went for about 2.5 hours to Bellflower. And then they were like, go about your day. And we were like, do we come back? And they were like, maybe. And we were like, okay. So we went to lunch and we had a fantastic lunch and we sat down and we talked about the meeting really like a lot and talked about a lot of our ideas. And I think, at least for myself and for a lot of us, we felt like, okay, maybe 712 could work. Like that was a takeaway, like maybe it could work. But some of the things that we think need to happen are listed here. We think that our sites need all of the title funds. The title funds are meant to be at sites, in our opinion, to be used with people who work directly with students and are a part of a site team, right? Being part of a site team means that you're at a site for 5, 10, 15 years, you have those relationships. We also were curious about the costs of an 8-period day. That's something that offered a lot of opportunity to students, to all students, but especially to students who are English language learners in special education. We believe that the teaching ratios, admin ratios, and counseling ratios are incredibly important, and they were a huge part of why the campus felt so calm. We also really were impressed and incredibly jealous about the amount of classified support that their team had, and really that their students had, to create the really functioning school. And we were sort of like, are we 2 schools on one site? Are we 1 school on one site? That is not a decision that's been made. Like, we don't know what that looks like in the upcoming years after next. And we kind of need the answer to that question to figure it out. So I put something in bold and red because I think it's really important. That's why I did so many things to make it stand out. But we left feeling like the concept of 712 works, but that the working conditions, current financial priorities, and trust needed to get there don't currently exist, and that sites alone can't make it work without significant changes. And those are my words, but I do feel like that encapsulate a lot of the conversation that we had at lunch that day.
Question on the 8-period day, did it have, is it all just traditional
No.
periods? Or?
It's a 4x4 block. And then
Not like what else
staff
you guys
members
know.
but it's a 4 blocks a day.
Each staff
Teachers
get a
gets
prep every
2 prep, so you get a prep every day and teach 6.
They were saying though that they felt like with projected budget cuts that the middle school would go back down to 6 and not the 8. That's what they were feeling like was coming for them.
Yeah, and along those lines, I don't want to speak for everybody, but from the the debrief that we got, when we looked at what the schedule presents as an opportunity for teachers, staff, and administration to do a lot of the work that needs to be done within the workday. Right now, we are relying a lot on extra duty. We're relying on people having the ability to tune in at times outside of the instructional day because it's not built into our schedules right now. What Bellflower had that we are missing is they have intentionality built into the day for the work that they need to do before they ever set foot in the classroom. And I cannot, the best way that I can like it is think about inviting a bunch of people over to your house and starting all the shopping and cooking as people are showing up, because that's how we're operating. Whereas if we could sit down and we could plan out, do the shopping ahead of time, prep things, be ready to welcome people as they come in, you're gonna have a much better party. And it's gonna work a lot better. We are planning as we go and we need more time. So that's why I think the Bell schedule is something, it may not be the Bellflower Bell schedule that we need, but we need to plan and think about with intentionality, building the work that we need to do into the day. Because right now, our teachers, our staff, and our administration, we just don't have the time to do the things that we need to do.
One, to be frank, the trip itself was sort of a microcosm of some of the things that we're experiencing on sites. Like, we didn't know how we were getting places. We didn't know what we were supposed to do next. We didn't know how long we were supposed to be. Like, it was in general very disorganized. And I feel fortunate that we had like really great site admin there to help try to figure things out. But like, it's hard to come back and be confident if we can't organize a 24-hour trip. How can we possibly take this on? Like, we were supposed to be done at Bellflower at noon and fly out at 10 p.m. Like, what were we supposed to be doing between noon and 10 p.m.? Like, I guess we'll go walk around the mall after lunch. Like there was just like, and then people are like, well, maybe I'll fly back early. But then the agenda changed the morning of. And then we get people from Elsie who were driving back. They had a long drive. Like, they thought that we were going to be leaving at 11. So like, when we look at this, right, and being confident about making decisions and about working as a team, if we can't plan a trip to LA for adults, right, who are, I would like to argue, fairly competent, it makes us nervous about trying to implement some of these bigger picture things.
Omar?
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna say, I think that question that you ask on deciding two schools, one side, or one school, one side, it's an important one. I think one thing that popped up just with the instructional calendar is this idea of back to school nights, middle school and high school on separate nights, when it takes so much work to put that together for staff, and to do that 2 back-to-back weeks, I think is an example of inefficiency, and also just creating these, I think there's that divide of like them and us, which isn't good, I think, for the overall identity of a school. But the point is that that's a good thing and something important that I think that we need to decide.
So first and foremost, to the panel and the team that took the trip, thank you so much for making time to have that opportunity to get on a functioning 7-12 model. What worries me is a lot of things I'm hearing of what made it work. We just got rid of and might not have it well, we'll try and make it work here. My biggest concern, President Caston, is I've been asking for the RBMS and PHS conversation for months now. And until we have a true definition of where this district is moving forward, it's really hard to be a part of these conversations, because I'm still a firm believer that RBMS and Frio geographically do not work. And to keep having the conversation that we're going to be a 7-12 district across the board and everything's going to work, until we have that conversation, it's really hard to have these conversations to help identify who we really are and what we want to be in the future. We have not finished a complete year of our first 7-12 tribes with Santa Rosa and Montgomery. Now we're jumping into Pioneer and Elsie Allen. We still don't know what's going on with Elsie Allen and CCLA in the 7th, 8th. We're trying to have conversations about that. There are still so many unknowns that are so vital on making sure a 8-period day sounds great. Matching bell sounds great. Are our label partners able to have a conversation about that? All stuff has to be negotiated. Like, there are so many unknowns in conversation that it's really hard to truly compare and contrast what's working and what's not working when we're not the same. And we don't have the same opportunity to put into what we may want to be successful. it sounds like, you know, the athletics was a big question and they figured it out by having their middle schoolers do intramural. For us to try and continue to move to an intramural, we're then taking things away that our middle school age students have been used to having. So those are really big conversations that are gonna impact our community. And it's kind of hard to have the, you know, lightning in the bottle to make those decisions. So, we really need to dive deep and find out who we want to be. And then help guide that shift so that the practitioners know what shift that needs to help us guide.
And that's actually a good point, because that's the point of today, is learning and being able to actually have that information starts with things like case studies and having folks go out and see what other people are doing. And so we aren't gonna be able to reach a place of having that information if we don't use opportunities like this to actually learn from folks that went out to get us information to be able to use in those decisions. So I'd love to get to a little bit more of the academic learnings, differentiation, collaboration, from the visit, like how that experience was. And you have more on your, presentation.
Yeah.
To be clear, I get to speak to anybody, 7th through 12th, who would like to continue doing 7th through 12th. And I haven't spoken to every single person, every single school, but I think most of us would prefer to be two sites. Our acknowledgement that 712 is working there is not at all us saying that this is the way we should do it. Just to be clear, I mean, maybe someone here feels that way, but the majority of people would prefer to each respect our two separate lanes and really respect middle school. This is just an example of it working for them. It doesn't mean it's gonna work for us.
They've been doing this for a while, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have, and I'd like to add that even this school, they said they've got it down well. They haven't got it perfectly. And they have their other high school, as a matter of fact, canceled last minute. That's why the trip had this big space at the end of the day, because they didn't actually feel that they were comfortable having somebody come visit them that day.
So in 81, is this something they were built for, or is it something that they transitioned into?
They were not built to
Built.
be, they transitioned.
Yeah, several decades ago they transitioned, but they said, they admitted themselves, this is not always perfect.
It'd be good if there was any historical history of what that transition was like. That'd be kind of good learning for us as we're attempting to do this.
There weren't
She
teachers
said there
there
were.
that didn't-
But
there's-
everyone, we are still actually broadcasting online, so one person at a time.
Their way that their setup was, as far as like separating the groups, was, I would say, probably similar to Santa Rosa, where the middle school had a building in a part, and then they went and accessed electives, another part of the campus. As far as like facilities go for academic classrooms, it seemed, if I haven't been to Monty to experience whether or not your middle is like that, but it felt similar to how Santa Rosa is structured as far as the separation. I would say the last 4 slides are just me talking about these things in more depth. Sarah O'Connor was like, girl, too many slides. So that we don't have to go
Well, I
over
guess-
those. You can review those.
I'll talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
let's-
academics.
yeah.
From what I saw and questions that I had and conversations that I had, I think that one of the things that I liked and the takeaway for me is that they offer advisory for students that need it, right? So based off of the success rate of students in certain core classes would dictate whether or not they had advisory. If they weren't doing well in math and science and English and history, then they were in advisory. If they were passing all their classes, they could opt out of the advisory and go into an extra elective. I like that. I think incentives are important. That's my opinion. I think that my takeaway from meeting with the staff was everyone was really happy to work there. And they were really happy to be a part of it. They specifically, because we had asked in specifics about, you know, did you choose to teach middle school? Did you choose to teach high school? Because we had teachers that were teaching both. And that was something that was very intriguing to me based off the fact that we were bringing Comstock and Pioneer together next year. And they said, oh, we're given the opportunity to choose where we want to choose, where we want to teach. And a lot of people teach both in the middle and the high school because they enjoy the different grade levels. But then there are some that are like, I'm only going to teach high school. And then there are some that are, I'm only going to teach middle school. So they had the opportunity to participate in those conversations, which I thought was very helpful. And it gave people, you know, I think it's important to have those conversations with teachers and really ask them, where do you want to be next year? What do you want to do? And it always goes back to this naive idea that, you know, happy teachers make happy kids. So that's important to me. I think that one of my biggest takeaways in regards to the 8 slides that our very articulate history teacher, thanks, Mom. I mean, she's a queen, right? Like that was an amazing presentation. Thank you, Ashley. And I am biased against history teachers because I was one. But I think that the reason why they're able to offer these amazingly robust things and have all of this staff is because they are very financially secure with the amount of schools they have. And that was very clear to me. We have 6 high schools. They have 2. And so our funds are greater. Our budget is greater than theirs because they have 3,000 less kids than us. But their schools have so much more. And so I think for me, what it gave me is this idea of like, look what it can be, you know, which can be a little defeating when faced with the fact of what it is and what we're going into next year. So that was a little hard to swallow, but.
What's their secondary population?
Their populations are roughly the same as ours. Their secondary population is about 4,000 kids. Not including their alternative education program, which was only about 150 kids. So you're figuring about 41 to 4,200 kids. Their population is roughly, I want to say it's like 50 less than 10,000. We're over that. We're over 12,000. Every class that comes into Bellflower is about 300 students. So they keep their population pretty secure in the sense that their their 6th grade class going into 7th is 300. Coming from the 10 different high schools. So they're utilizing their funds in a very like appropriate and meaningful way. It's very strategic, which gives them the opportunity to do all those things. We're spread so thin that it's hard. It's like apples and oranges. How do you compare? And so I think for me being there, it was lovely to see all of that. And wow, it was great seeing the kids together. They have break together. They have lunch together. There's no problems. I mean, these kids are all over the place. But how do you do that? How do you replicate that when you don't have the funding for it? And it's just so hard to do.
So, Casey, I'm gonna give you a chance to also from the LC, and then I'll go to.
Well, before you say that, I just want to say, and every single one of their campus supervisors also had a golf cart.
Yeah.
And the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my almost 30 years of education is at the end of break and lunch, they would bring the golf carts in and literally like cattle drive the kids. And we were all sitting there like, what is happening? Amazing. Everybody needs a golf cart.
Golf carts work.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then I'll go, so, I want to give you a chance to talk, and then Sean will go to you, and then Omar.
Oh, me, sorry. So, yeah, unfortunately, we missed the lunch, but we had a few hours to talk and collaborate on the way home. We agree with everything on the presentation. I think Ashley did a great job. And the 2 things that really stood out to me was adults. Like they were kind of streamlined. Their entire school were long pathways, but you saw an adult everywhere. And I got to walk around with the principal at break. And they had a process, and I think it's something that we could probably manage. They had a process where teachers had like a lunch and break stipend, so there were multiple teachers out at break and lunch. And unfortunately, with what we're going through, we don't see a lot of adults on our campus. Everywhere you turn, you saw an adult. And yeah, they have an amazing golf cart contract. I don't know if we get one here for that, but it just felt more safe because you saw adults. You saw adults talking with kids. That was the number one thing I saw. And then in terms of the only thing that I'm more afraid, I think we can pull this off next year. We're very excited to do it. I think Montgomery and Santa Rosa, what I have heard from parents and students is that they've done an amazing job. We are confident that we are going to do an amazing job, and I know Pioneer is going to do the same. The one thing that I am afraid of is the counseling piece and having counselors at 2 different schools. Listen, if you're not there the entire school day and the week, you're losing connection to our kids. And I do feel the social and emotional impact on our kids is going to be very tough if we really don't try to bolster that and keep as many adults on campus helping our students.
Well, Casey, and admin too. We've got admin about to be split, and I would
Yes,
echo the same
absolutely.
sentiment for admin. You're gonna be a principal at one place for 2 days and somewhere else for 3, like, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No. Thank you.
And they had 8 counselors on site, including a wellness counselor, they had a beautiful wellness center and an intervention coordinator. And so they had a lot of students.
Well, and I'd also like to highlight that all 8 of their counselors are administrative credentialed as well, and so they all share the responsibility of supervision. So whereas in Santa Rosa City Schools, you have 4 administrators right now, except for at Elsie, supervising every game, every after-school event, all the theater, all the drama, all the stuff, they have 13 doing the same thing.
I do want to recognize though, as the middle school voice, I think the only middle school teacher here, they did recognize in their presentation to us that the middle school is kind of lacking an identity and that they were really needing to focus on that. And they did feel to some extent middle school was getting lost in the shuffle and forgotten because the problems and the issues and even the goal in high school is feels so much more pressing and kind of more on fire when there's a problem. The middle school does get kind of washed out. And they were talking about that that's some of their plan for kind of the next round of their intentional planning. And I really want to come back to your point of intentionality was the word that I took out of the whole thing. That they were so intentional about what they did. And there was so much long-term planning because there was continuity of staff and administration there that it made that possible. So I think it was good that they were willing to point out their shortcomings in terms of middle school community and culture.
If I may, I know that there are directors that have questions but there is one thing that I just really want us to pause and name. And that is what brought us to the 7 to 12 is the fiscal crisis that the district is going through. So to Director De La Torre's point, right? We're still having to keep that central in our mind as we discuss what the next steps are going to be. And I do think that it's important to note that that decision created the 7 to 12 structure at Monty, at Santa Rosa High. It is also now necessitating that Pioneer and Elsie are transitioning. To what point that continues to become the model in Santa Rosa City Schools? I think the takeaway here and what we're pushing is it's not the amount of the money that we have to just focus on, it's how we're intentionally distributing it. And what we saw at Bellflower was intentional distribution to put resources and time back into the site. And I think that all of my colleagues sitting here could agree, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that intentional design. Now that the decision has brought us to a 7 to 12, we have to consider intentionally spending the money that we have specifically at the sites to put more staff on sites, to support teachers and to make sure that we have adults on this campus for our kiddos, especially at the 7 to 8. They need people. I do that on a daily basis. I try and get down to the area where our 7th and 8th graders just to be there because what they need is eyes and a smile and a high five or to go play ball with them. And that is very different than what high school principals generally are doing. And our 7th and 8th teachers need the same thing. They are used to a different type of interaction. So we have got to figure out, now that we are in the place that we are, intentionally designing and pushing resources into the site in a way we have not done in Santa Rosa City Schools. Bellflower is one example, and we're all calling out what we'd like to see, but that's the work at hand. That's what we're gonna have to focus on next year.
And I want to piggyback on what Kim's saying here in just the sense, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. I have no idea how district financial budgets are made. I don't work at the district, I work at the site. But I will say that when you hear things like Bellflower's Title I funding for the year is $1 million, Pioneer High School's Title I funding for the year is $72,000 total. And so when you talk about purchasing teacher professional development in the summer and doing extra duty, all of that comes from the budget that the school has. It's not coming from district central services. So that's what you're comparing, 1 million to 72,000. More.
Me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, a few things. In terms of academic questions, I'm wondering, did they have I'm thinking of like Math 1, like with 8th graders and 9th graders could kind of both take it. Do they mix them over there or not?
Oh,
I asked about that, so I teach math. Because that's what I've heard a lot when I watch the board meetings is that we can have the 8th graders, the middle schoolers taking the high school classes. And they said, no, absolutely not. They do offer Math 1 for 8th grade, but they have their own 8th grade Math 1 classes, just like our students do in middle school currently.
And I don't know if And I don't know if y'all talked about it already, but did you guys talk about like their whole PE thing that was mentioned before with like, their band or cheerleading or whatever could get PE credits and how, to what extent they do that there?
Oh, I would love to answer this one. I grew up in Los Angeles County, so it was like coming home for me. All of their athletics are a part of their physical education. So sixth period is the period that or eighth period, excuse me, not sixth, thank you. Eighth period is the period that all sports have their PE class. And so they have a ton of coaches that are on-site coaches. That is something that is rewarded in their system and prioritized. And so students that are doing cheerleading, baseball, football, whatever, they all are in that period 8 PE class, so they're getting PE credit for that, which is how LA County has run their schools forever. And so that is not only a incentive for students to participate in athletics, which we all want students to do if that's something they want to do, but it also gives them school credit for it. And so you have students that are taking 4 years of PE because they're invested in those classes that they're interested in, which could be football. Don't even get me started on their facilities. Their facilities are all turf, beautiful facilities, turf baseball field, track and field, football field, turf soccer field, separate from the stadium, and really nice. So, and they also had 3 full-time custodians during the day.
And the nice part is for the students who are playing sports, they're not being pulled out of their sixth period class all the time to go to a game.
And they
being pulled from
alternated
their PE.
PE too, right? Like odds were middle and then even for high
high
school
school.
or something
Yeah.
like that too, so there wasn't crossover in the locker room.
And they're using the
I can't
high
remember.
school athletes to help run intramurals.
Yeah, they had the high school kids helping coach.
We're gonna trustee Kirby because he's on the trip.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks again for the presentation. Couple things. Just to add on to what you were saying, you're right, it was nice to see this as it could be for us, but just remember, they also said they're getting ready to go through big cuts, so it'll be very interesting, I think, to come back in like 2 years and see how they're gonna adjust with their cuts, so they're getting ready, the impending cuts that they're gonna have to go through. Just to see how they end up. So they're gonna.
Well, but they're also starting way ahead
Sure.
of us, so, you look at the number of adults. And when we start cutting adults, we're starting down here and they're starting with, to us, which almost seems excessive because it's so many people. So if they're cutting 10%, it's still for us going to feel like a lot of people.
Right, and I think what she was referring to with the cuts for her title program is not that her title money would be cut, it's that she now had to share that title money with the other school. Because the other school had not received title money in the past. And so that was specifically what she had said, I will get less title next year because now half of my title that I get now will go to the other school. So their title's not getting cut, it's just that she has to now share it.
Right, but they're still gonna have to reduce positions.
I think what she had said in the meeting that we had with her was that they were not going to be able to offer so much robust professional development in the summer. They were not planning on cutting positions.
Well, I think too, we should be racing to the top, right? Whether it's with 712 or it's with our 55% of our budget going to classroom educators, we shouldn't be looking for comparisons of people who are doing it poorly, right? We should be looking for places that they're doing it well. We don't want places who are also getting cut and don't have counselors or admin, or who don't meet the state minimum requirement for paying people. Like, that's not who we're looking to compare ourselves to, like, right? We're looking to compare ourselves to people who are exceptional and who are doing exceptional work.
I was just say, I did my notes that about 350,000 of the $1 million in title went to staff members on site. And so they cut some of it, but she did say the summer professional development ate up a really, really large chunk of it because they're paying everyone additional to come in, and that was where she likely envisioned it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. The other thing, you guys all noticed that how safe and secure it are. So I spent a lot of time when you guys were months. I was talking to the admin team, the security guards, so they are a lot of them. just great.
Oh, yeah, so she said that the guy with the gun couldn't.
Well, he had to be
Presentation.
invited,
He had to be
is what she said.
He actually, while I was talking to him, came on the campus and, later after he got gone. It was for some kind of custody thing.
Yeah.
Appropriate. I'll just say that a big portion I want to talk to their team was that they actually do an excellent job, I think, of holding their kids accountable for their actions when they misbehave. And they just maintain that consistency. So that was a big part of, I think, why we're so, well behaved.
Intentionality of building the system so that we can hold them accountable, because believe me, we as teachers, we really want to, but we don't have systems in place, and because this was all done quickly, we need the time to build the community together so that we can come together and come up with a common bell schedule. We can come up with common plans on how we're gonna keep kids accountable, but we haven't had time to do that. And that's something that I feel like really came out of this, is like, we need some time to work, and not time led by somebody or more work to do. We need time to take it and the things that we learned and actually have time to plan it and put it in place. Because I think we can do that great stuff, but we've just gotta have time to do it.
Yeah, and the last point I wanted to make was that, I know you brought up regarding the bell schedules, and this may have been in your notes, was that, you know, they were sharing, some of the teachers, middle school teachers were able to teach high school students as well, so it really helped to expand the use of those staff, which, but again, you gotta have the same bell schedule.
Yeah. And credentials.
Yes.
If I may, I'm not sure which director was that raised the question about the intramural athletics. I would really be interested for us to discuss that, because one of the things that I see with athletics at the junior high is they are not equipped in the same way that high schoolers are. Transportation is a huge cost. And when we cannot fund that transportation, that cost gets projected onto our families in order to be able to participate. The idea of having intramurals actually probably would create a lot less, a lot more participation. It would be a lot less demand on our families to transport kids. It could be done in such a way that it wouldn't be impacting facilities as much. So there are, I think, very intentional reasons. And the idea is not to not allow 7th and 8th graders to participate in athletics. I actually think that it could be done more developmentally appropriately and in a more equitable and supportive fashion for our 7th and 8th graders to develop that as a format. That doesn't take away, we are in Sonoma County, there's a robust ability for students to participate in outside leagues. Some of those have their own challenges, some of those are about money, but the idea of being able to support a student to participate in basketball or volleyball and not have to worry about transportation, not have to worry about all of the other things that sometimes go along with competition and travel, I think is something that we need to do our due diligence to review before we look at that as something that would take away from our 7th, 8th graders. It could be really value added.
We have 5 more minutes, so Casey and then no more.
So I just want to throw out that, I think, and I know it was talked a little bit in the last board meeting that I heard. I think that's the importance too of really teaming up with those outside sports and allowing them to use our facility. And getting our 7th and 8th graders to be able to stay on our campus with outside teams. There are so many travel ball teams, AAU basketball, there's PAL football, there's soccer programs. And in my opinion, they're getting priced out of our fields. And I know there is a middle ground somewhere. And I do know, and I have friends that are the coaches. I have coaches wanting to come to LC, fix the fields and use them for their 11 to 15-year-olds. And those are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So really making it feasible for those outside parties to kind of use our fields, it will benefit a lot of our middle schoolers too. Omar?
I think one of the questions that I had was, well, there's two. First, around to understand the geographic makeup of the district, do they, because we have like multiple feeder districts that are coming into our secondary, are they pretty much those 10 and 2 schools? Is that generally the district, or are they competing with other districts internally? Is the first question.
No.
No, not really. I think that's generally their district.
Yeah, they're unified, so their elementary and their secondary is the same boundary.
And there's also not like too much charter competition maybe, or?
We did not, we cannot answer that.
I did, on their website, I didn't see.
Yeah.
That they authorized charters.
And the second part of the question, in terms of those figures that we saw in terms of salaries, I imagine that's just salary, but I don't know if staff could compare full benefit costs, the salary plus the cost of full benefits, so we could kind of compare that as well.
Comparison.
And the other last question that I had was, do we know if on their sites they had any like, because you talked about a lot of classified staff, did they also have like maybe HR staff that also worked on site or not?
No, their district office was separate from, their district office was separate from the site we were at. But they, one of the things that we did not cover is that they had 4 full-time college and career. They had 3 technicians and 1 counselor, full-time every day
At the one.
at the one school.
And they, in there, not only did they, that it really was college and career. So that was where students would get their work permits processed, where they would get information and support for filling out job applications, where they would get information about, annual enrollment, college options. So it really was active, not just for supporting seniors who are going to college. It was across the boards for anybody that would need access to college and career support.
They also had 10 CTE programs and were looking at expanding an introduction level to the middle school to connect with the CTE program to the high school, and had planned on making for all 9th graders completion of a CTE pathway a graduation requirement. And while all of their classes were A through G, their graduation requirements did not match the A through G graduation requirements, but they offered all A through G academic classes.
We'll go to Jeremy, and then we have to move to the next item.
Correct. So, I really want to elevate what, Principal Correa brought up, of the fact that we're 6 high schools in this district, and, really want a historical understanding of our challenges as a district to be at the forefront of our decisions moving forward. In the mid-90s, 2 high schools were voted on and built because we were housing 27,000 students in the school district. We now are responsible for 12,000 students, and that is declining. Due to the density of Sonoma County, whether you go west of Basketball, east of Sonoma, north of Cloverdale, south of Catalina, within that driving, you have a 30-minute driving distance to other districts that also have 1 high school or 2 high schools that they can fully support with their funding. While we are the only secondary district in the city of Santa Rosa, but we're attempting to fully fund and operate 6 high schools. Thus our challenge of the creation of a 7-12 needed. It's a really big challenge. And as a longtime parent advocate, one of the greatest challenges that I saw this district struggling with was trying to do everything everywhere because it was so good. And here we are dealing with it again, before we still have that many schools. And the competition of the charter schools, competition of the feeder schools that Bellflower didn't have, that we have. So it was great to get some eyes on something that was working and why it was working and have some comparative. We just seem to have a few more hurdles here that we need to continue to focus on and look further down the road on how we're gonna get through them.
You point out something important. Their allocation with 2 high schools of Title I is $3.5 million. Ours is 2.8. For a larger district, ours is 2.8, almost $2.9 million. And as a smaller district, their allocation of Title I is 3.5.
They have
So we're
higher
really
needs
specific to
students.
that.
Yeah, so they have many more. high needs
Yeah, so we're
students.
67%, SED, they're 89.
They are 89, so they're receiving a lot more
I'm
LCA.
gonna have to move this. I wanna make sure everyone gets a chance to speak.
They just get a lot more.
I wanted to kind of jump on what Director Delatorre was saying about, not adding on, because that is sort of a constant with our district, is the perpetual trying on of new hats. And like, this is a really big hat that you put on our heads, and there needs to be time. I think it can work. I'm not like, let's dump it, go back necessarily, but there has to be time to make it happen. My statement, when we were going through and having the sessions at all the high schools, and parents asked me, what do you think about this? Is I'm not opposed to the 7 to 12 model. I don't think our district has the capacity to do it in the time. I'll be charitable and say in the time that you've given us. And that's been the experience, is like the support that was promised was not followed through on to the degree that we needed. And so there's been a lot of effort put into trying to make that happen. And in order to have any chance to make this really workable and feasible and not just survivable, we need to have time, and we need to have things not just paused in terms of putting them on our plates. We need things removed. Like we need to look and see what are things that are not necessary, that are things that we want, but we don't need from teachers and from staff and sites. Like you have to cut down a bunch of other stuff in order to let this big, gigantic thing be able to happen. So, thank you.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for going on the trip and then helping educate us on it. We're gonna move to the next item, but this is an ongoing conversation, and I think one of the things that I also heard is they're concentrating their thoughts and resources into fewer sites, and that's maybe something that may have been our intent, but we didn't do the intentionality part of it yet. And so hopefully this can be where we're continuing that conversation and how we are concentrating those efforts. So thank you.
Teachers, the, I'm actually.
I would like for you in the Performing Arts Center
Yes.
to be no later than 5:30 p.m. My advice,
Be there about 5.
park on Peterson Lane and walk in the back.
Okay.
You go into the parking lot.
We park in the church.
Yeah, you park everywhere, yeah. If you guys want, let me just, if you get back there at 5, yeah, you get back there at 5, you call me on my cell phone, I'll come up and get my phone. I'll bob up there.
Bringing my parents and my. Got my everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Rosie was like, so he's gonna invite you to graduation. I'm like, it's not an invite.
He told me today.
But you know what though? Doesn't want no party, no dinner, no. I know, listen, I don't remember what. Oh, do I wear my grad hat?
No, you don't wear a hat unless you have a PhD.
Yeah,
So I can make one.
Counselor is the only one allowed to wear a hat. But you can wear a hat, this guy.
But I'll be there at 5 then. Okay.
Yeah.
In the back. Okay.
And if you need
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I forgot my.
I've got a projector, and I'm trying to get to you what.
So. I'd love that for you. We went to Winter
Okay.
So they can.
Matt?
They have problems.
Oh, it's enough.
And I also have.
Oh.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm out of Dallas.
You'll know me.
All right. The next item.
Next year we got it.
All right.
moment.
We have about 55 minutes, so I want to make sure we get started and use the time for this, so. We're now moving on to MTSS framework, guiding coalition panel and the CAPS network.
So I'm going to go ahead and just say thank you. Same as what I shared with the other team presenting. Thank you for being here when I know it's an incredibly busy time, and I know that this work is incredibly important as we move forward. And the work that you guys have done over this last couple of years is just really impressive, and is really what we want to use to build upon for our district going forward. So I'd like to hand it over to Dr. McCarty to get us started.
Okay, as you're pulling the slides up.
Yep, I will.
I'm gonna butt in first.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna ask actually to go around, Emma, you're 100%, you should be introduced, you should be acknowledged, and you could be cherished too, so, if you could just go, your name, your school, and your department, please. Thanks.
So I'm Emma Thompson. I am at LC Allen High School. I'm in special ed and LC Allen have been part of the CAPS network for 2 years now. And I've gone to 2 or 3 different trainings for it now.
How long have you been at LC?
As a teacher, this is my 4th year, but I was an assistant before that, so 7 years altogether.
Chris Ackerman, CCLA. I'm in history and CCLA, our group has been together for 2 years.
Gabriela Mendoza Torres, interim principal at CCLA, and we have been in CAPS or doing CAPS work officially for 2 years, but I would say we have started this momentum of MTSS 4 years ago.
Leah Tavaseu, 4th grade, teacher at CCLA.
Eleanor Warren, Vice Principal at Montgomery. This is my 5th year at Montgomery, and we started doing the CAPS network work this year.
Amy Turner, I'm at Montgomery Junior, I teach 7th and 8th grade, history. And, I just have to add the reason I'm here today, because I was not involuntarily transferred, as of Monday. But I started and I've got all this work, but I, just want to give you guys the best time and energy in someone and then you shove them off somewhere else and that work gets lost.
In case you wanted to know, when Gabby said we started 4 years ago, Amy Scribner was a big part of that when she was at CCLA.
So I was a school climber and culture coach, so I was there for 4 years, 3 years.
Well, that's it.
Okay, you have the special ed review. I'm gonna start there.
Oh, sorry, I stopped projecting to the screen in here. Let me try this again.
While the slide's coming up, the model that we're talking about is not new to me. This would not be my first rodeo in using this model. In my previous position, I was the director of educational services and I was responsible in Dublin for fully implementing this in a district of 12,000 for all of our schools, all of our school members, all of our principals, all of our teachers that got this training. I will say when we go to the special education summary, one of the key items in the special education summary, and this is a dot that may connect to a previous presentation where people were saying we need to look at more resources. Our identification of special needs kids was much higher than the county and the state average. And I think it was identified about $26 million additional if the rate was brought down. In Dublin, we fully served kids, we fully integrated kids, and we had a special ed identification rate of between 10 and 11%. And that's because we were all in on this model. So I'm not speaking about reading books, I'm talking about, I have led this process and I would encourage the board and everybody to really work with this. In the special ed audit, one of the terms that you see over and over again is called MPSS. And here's what the words mean. Multi-tiered systems of support. Before you see the tiers. There's 3 tiers on the triangle. Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 is grade level standards for all students. Tier 3 is kids that need exceptional amounts of support. Tier 2 is additional support, but still on grade level standards. The particular model we're on, the mantra, is getting as many kids and many to be learning the grade level standards, which happens to be Common Core standards, which happens to be college and career ready standards. That's the model. So I just wanted to make that point. The student study team comments in the special ed review is likely because there wasn't a consistent model like this that would give explicit guidance in all the different tiers that we go through before we make a referral to special education. So it means we're serving kids, we're preventing, and then as a last resort, we have kids go into special education. So I wanted to make that comment. If we could now, Lisa, go to the PowerPoint slides. I am following the PowerPoint slides that Aida put in. She had a family emergency. I hope that I can even come remotely close to how well she would be presenting. I am intimidated by that. I have an audience that will give me my feedback, but if you could go to the next slide. Would be the agenda. We're gonna do a brief overview. We're gonna have a panel discussion, and really you want to hear from the panel. We're gonna not spend any time on the facility of PLC Lite. It's a very good article. It goes more in depth if you want some background information about doing things haphazardly versus doing things in depth. It shows some nice interest, and then certainly open discussion with trustees on that. I also do want to say before I start that I did make this presentation similar one to the executive council. And I want to make sure that I'm really clear on one point, if you will correct me if I'm wrong. When I made the comment that this is a 3-year minimum program, it's a 3-year rollout. My experience in Dublin, it's 6 years minimum. And a couple of the people I was presenting to chuckled. The reason they chuckled is because it says, we don't do anything consistently in Santa Rosa. So I am throwing a large ask to the board that when we start this process, we stay all in for multiple years. That gives the teachers confidence that as they go through these layers, that we will stick with this process. It's not automatic, it's not easy, it takes a lot of work. We have to stick with it. That would be my advocacy. If we go to the next slide. So what is in the name CAPS? So CAPS basically says it's the California Principal Support Network. That's the group that we're working with to help us understand this model. Now, immediately, being Santa Rosa, we're tweaking that because while it's the CAPS, we want to say that this isn't about principals. This is about principals and teachers and classified. And Dublin was all about parents also, forming what's called a guiding coalition. For those of you in the business world, you may have heard of a person, Dr. Cotter, who has a very famous change model. And in his change model, in fact, actually, it's also posted in our SRTA hallway, which I reminded them, that there are 8 steps in his change model. The first one is to create a sense of urgency. If the special ed review doesn't create a sense of urgency in all of us, then there is a problem with us. We have to really look at that data. The second one is using a guiding coalition has been one of the most important factors of ongoing change. And we heard from the previous presentation that our principals are stretched. The teachers want more from our principals. One of the remedies for that is that we have outstanding teachers and classified staff and other staff who work with the principal on the implementation of this model. And I know our speakers will be talking about this, but it is a really important thing. And I will say, Emma, that I owe it to the LC staff on October 3rd. I listened and watched the teachers present and lead at the staff development day. I was blown away. Where did they get those leadership skills? And this is one of the places they got the leadership skills. So one of the things that I believe that we will notice district-wide is a leveling of leadership. There's going to be significant numbers of leaders that will be popping up, helping the principal take some burden off that. And the teachers will have one of the best voices, which is other teachers. And I think that's really critical to the change effort. I could say whatever I wanted to say. Nick, you could say whatever you want to say. But when it comes from the teachers to other teachers, guess what? They know how to message. So that's really important. I also want to say one thing about CAPS. All of our feeder districts are in CAPS. They just ended their 2nd year. All of our competitive K-12s that we're worried about sometimes, they're just finished their 3rd year. So we're going to be doing a catch-up. One of the ways that we're going to catch up faster and go faster is we're also proposing a district guiding coalition. That is, people like yourselves who are experienced with this process, working with administrators in the district office, working with SRTA to say, how can we make this go faster? If there are some problems, let's address it right away. If we have some bright spots, just like your visit to Bellflower, let's find the places where things are going really well.
I'm gonna interject something really
Yes,
quick.
please.
So, several years ago, Dr. Cindy Pilar, who really leads this work, came and asked if she could be coming into Santa Rosa schools to help us. And start implementing this, and that's where Elsie and CCLA and other school sites were part of it, but then as we went to 712s, pulled back because it wasn't the mesh. And I believe, is they Megan, were you on at First Later? Yeah. So it was, so it's not new to our staff. But once again, we have to build it together. Dr. Pilar was also the principal of Montgomery High. She's read about us all in the paper. She follows us well. She wants us to be successful. She wants to give us more of her time. She's been very gracious and helpful in supporting us. I just wanted to put that.
So when you mentioned the pause because the 7-12 didn't match, it didn't match with the transition, or it's not going to match going forward?
But going forward, you'd have one coalition that, so it won't be a divided, so it would be a together. So it will be far better, I would say, achieved and I'm trying to think of the word.
To add on to
Get
this,
together. I don't know.
remember during my public comment, and then you mentioned it before, you have to get everybody merged, safe, figure out the day-to-day logistics before you can even take on this work, because you have to know each other, you have to trust each other, and you also have to have the schedules and the infrastructure there to build it. And last year, when we were putting the 7-12, the time frame to do that was too short, and so it made sense to do a pause.
I also feel it's the done to versus the done with. And so we want to make sure it's good.
If we could shift to the next slide, please. And I want to say that Chris just touched upon, there are six one-day sessions for each year. Chris just touched upon session 1 and session 2, and that's building the learning culture, getting the entire staff together. And when we heard the principals talk yesterday about the 7-12, they talked over and over and over again that we had to establish a culture where we could communicate with each other. And that's really what CAPS will be adding to. By doing the CAPS program, we'll be adding to the presentation we just heard. They're going to be on a similar page.
And just so you know, this isn't like a program like you buy a textbook and you implement it. This is very cultural. This is just the way a school operates. Should operate.
I want to establish a really important point about this work, and that is it has to be teacher-led. And so that if I'm off base, I know I'll get some feedback. But I want to do a little history lesson. How many of you have heard the Common Core standards? Okay, the Common Core standards were not written by teachers. They were written more by researchers, by consultants. And the teachers will tell you they are not user-friendly. They are obtuse. And the teachers are facing these books that are written by, about the Common Core standards, and they're going, how do we interpret them? One of the things that's key about this program is we have to say, and the other thing about the Common Core standards are there are too many. If the students had to learn all the Common Core standards, they would be driving the bus. They would be working 24 years old. There's too many. So then how do we then reduce that? One of the comments that came from the team that presented to the administrators is we have to have a permission structure to the teachers to say, we need you as professionals to decide what are the priority standards. We need to give you time to start breaking these skills down. And there are techniques in this model that show the teachers how to do that. And I know they will talk about that. The second part of teacher ownership is now that we have these priority standards, how do we know the kids are meeting them? Well, that's when we get into formative assessments, and the teachers will talk about that. So when we do a formative assessment, and then we see how the kids are doing, there's two different paths. One path is some kids might hit it out of the park. Maybe they need some acceleration. The other path is maybe kids need some support. In the model before you, the teachers and the principals need to have rich conversations about how we set up these new systems. And so they will talk about that. And then lastly, in terms of the model here, this isn't just about academics. It's not just about remediation, we do that. And it is also about acceleration, but it's also about social emotional awareness. So that basically the schools are gonna be restructured. Ultimately in Dublin, this model was used for our SIPSs. This model drove our LCAP. And the other thing I'm gonna give you a heads up on, if you wanna stop the process right now, you can. I promise you that after the sites all start talking about these models, they're gonna start pressing on the district to find additional resources. Because it's just a natural run of events. Just like the last group said, we need more resources. They're probably gonna say we need more resources here also. So I'm just giving you a heads up because.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I keep interrupting you.
This is great. They want you to go whether they make.
Keep in mind, as much as teachers are gonna ask you for money, we are really stingy and we are really good about finding details. So our first thing, what we do is we cut all the fluff and then we start to ask you for money. So by the time we get to that point, know that we have done a lot of background work before we ask for more money.
But this should be driving the LCAP. When we talk about the LCAP, it shouldn't be some separate thing. We should be rolling out the asks to the LCAP from the sites. And that process will start happening more and more often. So I'm gonna switch to you. I say you want to talk about the test scores?
Do we have a slide for that?
Yes.
Okay. This is another reason why we're gonna go with the test scores. In the slide presentations, you also have a, larger one that's all built out all the way from 2021 until this year. All of the data that we have for all of our students, subgroups, that was all actually made by, Karen Williamson, which is amazing.
attach that one.
Oh, you did?
Whittled down this.
She made me a liar. I did.
I remember looking at it.
This one.
Yeah, so there you're gonna see, so
Updated.
you are gonna, yeah, so Karen Williamson, I have to give her a shout out because she's the one who actually got all this information. And you're gonna see. This is where our kids are out. This is our reality. It doesn't have to be our reality. And there are many reasons for it and it's, all of it together. And this is one way that we can be better is actually going with what are essential standards. What do our kids have to know before they go to the next grade? When I talk to a 4th grade teacher and I'm a 3rd grade teacher, hey, this is what I really need your kids to know. And so it really goes up and it's articulation, which we talk about, we don't actually do, or do it well. So this is the way we can do that. And it's all the way from high school down, because all the way to TK, because we have the students, it's our job and our, mission to get them where they need to go to be college. And I want to say career, I want to make sure that keeps coming up ready. So you can dive into this on your own time, because I know, every morning you'll want to drink it, while you're drinking your coffee, go over it. More importantly, I really want to be able to, teachers should be presenting, because that's who's really doing the work. I don't understand why it's called Principal Network. I've shared that because it really is the teachers doing the work.
It's principal support.
Thank you, but not.
Principal's
yeah.
role is to support.
Yeah, and so but I think that's the most important thing, right? Because you are in the classroom doing the work. Right. So, well, I'm gonna have actually Leah share the.
Yeah.
Jump on in, Amy. Go.
What you're talking about with the data on that one, in our last, professional development, we kind of talked about this and then the teachers were so ready to dive into the work and we were feeling as a point of building community was letting us get to the work, stop talking about our feelings and how we feel about the merger and blah, 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 like, let's get to work. And people were so eager to get into, what are our essential standards and like letting 8th grade talk to 9th grade and 9th grade talk to 10th grade and like starting to build that even just the energy around that was really, it was so positive, but that can be a culture building moment as we're going from, into 7-12 schools.
And I think if I could interject, It also means that because our feeder districts are also in this model, we now have a common system of common methods. We can begin to make sure that when those kids come to our district, they're better prepared.
Or possibly eventually year 7, 8, have conversations
Yes.
with those districts.
I'm gonna actually let, Leah, start us off. So if you will just go through what this is.
This is the work.
So, I think that's the same one that's down there, right? So as it was mentioned, we're in, CCLA is in year 2 of the, CAPS, professional development. And so, in year 2, what we do, is look at our MTSS model, so our multiple, tiered support system. And so you really have to analyze, where you are at as a site. Like, so they teach you about each tier, what does it look like, what should it look like, what doesn't it look like, right? And so we're constantly reflecting as a site, like, where are we, right? So they make you put it in red if you're not there, they make you put it in blue if you're there. So as you can see, like, we're in year 2 and we have a lot of red still. But really, what I think is the most impactful part of the process is that when you sit as a guiding coalition, so in our guiding coalition, it's an administrator, 2 elementary teachers, 2 middle school teachers, because we're TK8. And we really, it's like Amy was just saying, it's like that they constantly tell you, clarity precedes competence, right? So like, it's that moment where you're sitting there and you're all like having a very transparent conversation on like, this is where we're at, right? And it's very clear where we're at, we're all in good consensus, this is where we're at. And then it comes with, well, what do we need to do next, right? And so you're constantly being taught, but also have to reflect. And I think as teachers, that's the part that those of us that have been participating in this process, we find the most valuable, is that they're really hard days in terms of like you're taught, it's like a college course all day. And then we get work time at the time, but the work time at the end is like reflection, right? Like, you've been taught all this. What does this look in your site? Like, now how are you going to take this to your site? And how are you going to disseminate this information to everyone in your staff meetings? How are you going to get everybody else on board? Not the principal, but like the teachers. Like, how are we as teacher leaders going to get everyone to get on board with this process? So then we have to teach our colleagues this and get them on board to do this work. We definitely have met resistance, and that's also something they prepare us for in this process, is that anytime that you encounter change, there's going to be resistance. So we're trained in doing that too. We prepare for staff resistance. And I think there was more the first year. Now that this is the second year, I think it's kind of the tone of like, well, this is what we're doing, and the numbers are higher. And so like the outliers are kind of like, well, this is what we're doing, right? So I think in all, it's been a very positive experience for our site. We're at the point in the process where we have our professional learning teams. So people are divided up in middle school by departments mostly. In elementary, it's by grade level. So people have their team, and we're meeting, at least for elementary, we're meeting during our Wednesday planning time. But it's slowly, and my team can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's slowly turning into what we traditionally collaborate on, is like, we're doing this lesson, we're doing this field trip, now it's turning into like, this is the data for writing. This is the data for the last math assessment. Whatever the data is, this is what it is. Like, your students really did well. Like, what did you do? Like, my students didn't do as well. And so the conversation is not so much on like planning minutia stuff, more like looking at data and instructional practices that are working and teaching each other, learning from each other. And I think that that's the ultimate goal. There's a lot of culture building. When I was hearing the other group present and they were talking about culture, so much of what they were talking about, this process kind of forces you to do, because you have to get very comfortable with being vulnerable,
right? And say, this is what I'm doing in my classroom. These are my test scores. They're not great, right? But maybe what Gabby's doing is great and she's gonna show me and I'm gonna try it and I'm gonna do it with my students, right? So it's like constant culture building around, it's okay for you to be in the learning phase. We're all learning, we're all trying to learn from each other and figure it out.
I think that's important because first of all, thank you for being vulnerable to show that because there's red, but that's our reality, which is not negative. That's honest and that's how we're gonna improve. And I think that that's really important. And I think you said something else really important. The teachers are teaching each other. Administrators come and go. We know that. So I think it's important that our staff, our staff are there. They're the constant. And so that's where it has to be. Because when an administrator leaves, the work shouldn't leave with them or the systems, the protocol. That's who's gonna make it stay, it's the staff. So I just kind of.
And that's why they also say like with selecting essential standards, like it always comes up as a question, like, was that a district responsibility? Like, should the district be dictating the essential standards to every site? And the answer is no. When teachers have to work through looking at those essential standards, unpacking the standards, knowing what the learning looks like, knowing how do I know a student knows it? How do I know a student doesn't know it? When you as a staff, as a teacher go through that, that builds capacity within your staff of being able to do that across content areas, across anywhere, right? So they don't want the district office to publish essential standards per grade level. They want teachers in the trenches doing the work, selecting the standards, coming up with agreements as a grade level and saying, this is what a fourth grader in the first trimester needs to accomplish in math and writing and whatever. And that's like a consensus for consistency in the grade level and ensuring that they move on, knowing what they need to move on with.
Tyler, I know you had something.
Yeah.
I was just gonna tag on to what Elisa said, and Chris, you kind of, I think, spoke to the power of this earlier, that it's more than just what the work that's being done, it's how you're doing it. It's creating like a system and flow of work that outlasts any one person on the site, because all too often when we train a person and they have this skill set when they're gone, the skill set goes with them, and this is about establishing a flow of work that remains and really changes the way we develop ourselves as professionals. And we're very new into the process at Montgomery, but it's already had an impact on the way we have had some professional developments. And I do want to just give Amy and Gina Sfera, who's not here, some credit, because they are the ones who championed our last professional development day that we did get a lot of staff compliments on, not just administrators feeling good about how it went, and they're going to continue to help with that work next year. And it's just super important, valuable work.
So also, once again, the prior presentation talked about being intentional. And one of the things that we have done is realize, when are we going to do this work? And that's really important. And so during our leadership committee, we sat there and we looked at the SRTA contract. Principals have 21 hours for staff meetings, and we talked about it as department heads and lead teachers. And Gabby, to be honest, she let us talk about it, and she just was there as the admin rep. And we decided that it made more sense to use our staff meeting time instead of Gabby talking at us, and our department time instead of department heads having their same meeting, talking at you, which could have been an email. No, we're gonna take those 21 hours and this is where we're gonna do the work. And there was, the first concern was, and it usually is with union, is how do we make sure that teachers get to decide what we're supposed to do? And that's a huge fear. And we made it very clear that we're gonna have a release. The Guiding Coalition is going to start to do the work to model. And then once we feel more comfortable, then they are just there for support. And so hopefully by the end of the year, all that 21 hours is PLTs deciding what the agenda is and getting the work done. In addition, our new calendar has our 2 professional development days. And from what I understand, I don't think this is. I can share it because we tell district office all the time, what we really want for staff professional development days, it needs to be site-based. Because that's where the work is being done. And so we have, thank you, we have the 2 days, one's for mandated training, the other one is for site, correct? At least that's what I was led to believe.
4 days total.
Yeah, but our 2 professional development days during the year are tacked on at the
Yeah.
beginning. So principal site-based. So like if Gabby was still there, she'd immediately go to the guiding coalition or to the department head and she'd go, hey, but what are we doing? And we do it. So we're already building those systems. In addition, at our site, when we go to figure out the LCAP, our guiding coalition, we discovered that after 1.5 years, we were still trying to get our heads wrapped around stuff and it wasn't working. So Gabby had money set aside that we got was it half day, full day?
It was a full day.
Full day. The guiding coalition got done and we just worked. And then it was great because that's when things clicked. So now we're having discussions with about LCAP and with BAB about setting aside time for our PLTs to either do work, getting paid to do work over the summer, paying for substitutes to do it during the day. So all of that.
I'm glad you brought that up because next week when the LCAP comes to you to look at, I want you to know that has been built up for, I'm gonna say, our non-charters. So funding has been put in LCAP, so it doesn't come out of number 1 sites funding. And it's the time, and it's not the district office saying you're gonna take a day. The sites are gonna figure out what's best for the teachers. Do you want a day? Do you want a half a day? Do you want to work after hours and get extra, the compensated rate? And so we have days built in throughout the year. So I want to make sure that that's part of it and built in because that is huge.
Because it definitely, even though we all attend the same trainings, like you're in cohorts, like you're year 1, you're year 2, you're year 3. It's gonna look so different across sites, right? Just in terms of like what your staffing is, what your students are, like where you are in the process, of it all is gonna look very different. So like we talked about on our site, because we're starting year 3 next year, about doing like release days throughout the year with grade level teams where like guiding coalition members can be leading that work, like help supporting them, helping certain grade levels with getting to common formative assessments, how do you review data, how do you create common formative assessments, how do you use the curriculum to not do double the work, like use what you have to make the common formative assessments. So we would be able to lead the grade level PLTs or department PLTs in that.
Let me ask you a question to read. I talked about a district guiding coalition. So for those of you who were experienced at the end of year 2, if you realize that Nicole Dimich is going to be presenting on unwrapping the standards, looking at depth of knowledge, looking at pacing guides, would you feel like it would be useful for you to sort of give everybody a heads up, a warning? This is going to require a lot of work during these months so that you would give guidance to the principals who haven't been through this process and to the teachers. And also we could pre-plan for this might be times when we need extra release time. So the teachers who receive this new information wouldn't see it as such a big ask. That's sort of what I was thinking about for a district guiding coalition. You would be our pacing. You would give us heads up. Don't press on this, give a little bit more time here. That would be the thought behind that. Do you think that's a good idea?
Mm-hmm. You'd be able to have a pulse on what's going on at sites.
Yes.
From a district level.
Yeah.
I have a couple of different things. One, do you have specific questions about CAPS that we should be answering in this panel? Because I can talk all day, that. But it's not gonna make a difference if it's not what you're interested in. So I'd love for you guys to think of that. And then I do have a couple of other things about the cross grade vertical articulation and then even sharing between schools. So I'll let you decide.
Cross
which
grade
one
vertical
fits.
articulation would be one of my questions anyway. So.
Okay, so, Elsie Allen right now, I can speak on so I'm able to come at this from a little bit of a unique perspective in that I am grade content, but I'm also special ed. So my students in special ed are receiving grade level curriculum. They are not receiving a dumbed down version of the content that my peers and my colleagues are teaching. To the point where my colleague, Ms. Martinez, and I have opened up our doors and we have actually traded students in the classroom because we are so in tune and able to teach content to our kids. So that's the first thing I'd like, I will say that every single time we meet if I have to. Because yes, we are talking about special ed, but special ed is not the enemy here.
Just so you know, when we talk about we are gonna make sure everybody meets standards, it's every student who is going to be able to be a fully functioning adult on their own.
So that means all of my students who are in SGI on my caseload, they are all receiving grade level instruction. So they are seeing me every single day. They are getting the content that Ms. Martinez is also teaching. We are on the same page. We have worked with our, because we're world history, so we're your first step in history. So we have also worked with our US history teacher to say, hey, what do you want as background knowledge, but what are you like, you actually don't teach this at all. Please don't spend time on it. So we don't. And that has made us go from like 15 standards to 4.
What does that mean?
So the standards are this. I'm just a lot more comfortable teaching.
Emma was a shy second grader, I just have to say that. I'm not joking.
Have I ever been shy?
Yeah, second grader.
I went to school with your daughter.
Yeah.
So the Common Core standards, we have what?
50 billion.
At least
Four different strands.
If everybody was to learn the Common Core standards, all of them, what the state has said, it will take over 23 years.
And then for history standards, you have the Common Core, you have the content standards, and then you have the historical skills.
And so this allows us to actually focus on, okay, so maybe we don't have to focus on battle dates, but we know that in US history, map reading is going to be super, super important. So we're going to make sure that we include map reading in everything that we touch on throughout the year. So it's getting rid of a lot of fluff. I now don't have to worry about what I'm teaching. I'm to the point now where I can just show up each day and I know exactly what I'm teaching because we've spent all of this time in our Wednesday morning PLTs. There's not a PLC because the school itself is a PLC. We are a professional learning community. As the grade level or subject specific teams, we are working together to narrow down what exactly we're teaching. And eventually in the year 2 and the year 3, it's day by day, minute by minute, hyperlink plug and play kind of thing. So that when you do have a new teacher come in, they're not overwhelmed. They know, oh, the first 3 weeks of school, I teach map reading, geography, and basic democracy. All right, the next 3 weeks, I'm teaching Industrial Revolution, or, like you're going down. And so it's very, very simple for teachers to be able to come in to actually get to know the school and the culture and the students and not worry about, oh, I taught French Revolution here, but now I have to teach the Mexican Revolution here.
And just to add on to that, it goes so far as I'm a middle school teacher during the school year. I teach high school credit recovery during the summer. I email Sharpio, hey Sharpio, well, what's going on in US history? He tells me what they focus on. He tells me the skills. And then between him and Emma, they have shared 50 billion documents. So I'm going through right now to figure out what I'm teaching. I already have my essential standards. I already know how to plug in ethnic studies and integrate that within US history, credit recovery. I am focusing on certain skills and I have a whole bunch of lessons that Sharpio has already shared with me. And that was more than I got on my first year as an English teacher in 2015.
So your jobs are becoming more efficient with this
Oh,
right?
amazing. And then just little things. I feel more confident,
Bless you.
but I also, it's more fun because I don't know, this teachers are known for beg, borrow, and steal. And for somebody to be willing to share everything, it's a treasure trove. It's fun.
I know, it's interesting, because I've instructors at the junior college that don't even want to share their syllabus.
Oh, that's
It's like,
ridiculous.
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me, Omar, go ahead and ask. your
Jenna has
question.
already
Yeah.
started one. Jenna Becker, for the history department.
Let me get to Omar.
Yeah, thank you. I did have two questions. As it relates to okay, so we're doing the PD at the beginning of the year. And it sounds like there's also the sites that are using hours, like in meetings, if they choose to do that. But I'm wondering, in terms of the plan for next year, if the district has allotted additional resources to kind of help with this implementation, or is it up to the sites to use what's been allotted to them to figure out how they're going to make this happen? Because it seems like a lot of sites, this is going to be the beginning. And so I'm wondering if we thought about that in advance, in terms of
So
helping
it
to
is,
make it happen.
the training guides through that. So, and yes, we have scheduled funding for supports like release time. We have some supplies for materials and supplies and supplemental funding. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the plan is in terms of that. Have we allotted resources above and beyond that PD?
Yeah, so next week when we get the LCAP and the budget hearing, we will be able to ask that question and have the spreadsheet in front of us.
It actually is broken down to release days, sub days, hours, all kinds of different ways that you can make things happen, and the support will be there at the sites for the teachers, for the principal to help guide it, not oversee it or top down, but to help support that.
I think I also have the.
Go ahead.
So Omar, the district is gonna be responsible for first getting us there. Then it's gonna be the sites to continue to give us the time, and the district is going to approve it. That's how the fund it. So the district is the one to get us there first. Once we're there and we're in the trainings, then it's a lot more site-based, but we are going to be looking to the district in order for all of us to know that this is a thing that we are doing or not. And then B, once we have the approval that yes, this is where we want to go, because we are seeing already so much work. Like, I will show you my grade book and you can see well, I don't have my computer with me right now, but someone could log into my grade book and see that students are succeeding, right? And that we want all students to be successful. Then it goes more on the site.
Does this tie into the equity-based grading work?
Oh my. Right.
So much so.
And the end.
I knew the answer. I was teeing you up to comment.
But I do. Okay, Omar, you had a second question, and then I had a clarified question for Nick.
Yeah, and the second part is, it sounds all really cool with the, finding out what the next teacher is going to need from the students and all that stuff. That totally makes sense. I'm wondering I imagine this is for all students, but I'm wondering how that then ties into, like, for example, students that are going to be potentially taking AP exams, and then what's needed of them is completely different, right? Based on this College Board stuff.
And no. So what we do is, in the process, when we're doing these formative assessments, if they are meeting standards, we don't give up on you. There's always work to do. So while some of the students are going to be working on additional support to meet them, the students who have already met are going deeper within the curriculum. So in an ideal world, you would know more about this, but if you get more kids who are adding needs. And you have more teachers who are now supporting both the students who are getting there. We can now get more kids to the AP level, get more kids taking those IB classes, because supports are for every student in the school, regardless of ability level.
If just to go back to the MTSS triangle, and I know it's backwards, or upside down on purpose, where you're looking at your tier 1, and that is your prevention. So when you are talking about making sure that every single child is looking at grade level or higher standards in your tier 1, as your teachers are creating their lessons, this is their opportunity to prevent learning gaps. So if you can, within your lesson, differentiate, anticipate the needs, and meet those needs and intervene and do the extensions, then they will be coming out of whatever grade level or whatever class without the learning gap. That is directly correlated with what we're seeing on our data, that we have students that have so many learning gaps. So here in this MTSS systems, realistically, like the tier 1 is your prevention, because this is your shot to make sure that you don't create a learning gap. And therefore have more students that are going into the AP courses, students that are actually learning at the grade levels or higher. So that's the first slice where everybody has access to that, right? So.
Did you get your question answered about the vertical articulation?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's some of the answer on it. The thing that's most appealing about this model is it moves, there's been intentionality in a lot of the things the board has done in the last year to 18 months to move things to the site and create a ground up leadership. And it's hard to do that when we're dealing with all the other things we're dealing with. But this model, with it being something we're already doing, I think it gives us the ability to do it consistently, be unique at each site consistently. And so I see a lot of benefit for it. I think the challenge that is in my head is how can we, I don't know how we make the changes that we need to make without this actually being in place and working to get the site-based leadership, the curriculum alignments, the differentiation, ability to talk, all those things seem to come through the system. And so I really don't know what we do if we don't do this consistently with other schools.
Well,
This
if you
is where
look at how excited she is.
This is where the 8-step model, and then on the first couple slides, he told you the level 1 and level 2, the first workshops, was all about drinking the Kool-Aid. It has taken 2 years to get to a point at CCLA where we feel comfortable enough and vulnerable enough to show you a huge document filled with red that shows you all the things we know we have to do, right? So it's going to take time. But that being said, we want a district level guiding coalition. So one of the things that SRTA has talked over and over again, the teachers do not feel heard. All right? McCarty comes to a union meeting and he talks to us.
And I'm still alive.
And he tells us at the end of the meeting, he tells us the fact that you pushed back and you asked us questions made me know that we're on the right track. Because if you would have smiled and just nodded your head, we wouldn't be having an actual conversation.
Right.
So the work is being done. We just have to know that it's going to take time.
And we presented to the administrators 2 weeks ago. We presented to the administrators 2 weeks ago, or the panel. And one of the things that is very important is I don't want to use the word selecting, but like for creating your guiding coalition. Like we talked to administrators about, like, you want to select teachers who want to do this work and want to be there. Nobody wants to be voluntold. If you're voluntold, you're not going to be invested. But you also want to, as an administrator, pick very natural teacher leaders, people that teachers are listened to, feel comfortable coming to speak, talk to, things like that. So I think that's the very first step in being able to do the work at sites, right? Is like principals kind of working to select and create this guiding coalition of, you know, teacher leaders and who are gonna be teaching the staff.
And they're not all gonna be like me, where I'm in all these meetings and I'm loud and blunt.
At the same time, I think people are eager to get to work.
Yes.
So this work is not something new. It's not a new program, a new book, a new what, it's like, pick up the tools you already have. We've already done like, whatever you wanna call them, power standards, like over the years, if you've been in education for a minute, like we've done this work, and so we're like, oh, I know how to do that. Oh, but we're doing it with this kind of, and again, the word keeps coming up, but this intentional design behind it. People like that, and then they like the idea of efficiency. Like, we're gonna get more efficient at what we're doing, and so Chris and I sat together in equity-based grading this year, and we're like kept elbowing each other, oh my god, it's so great, but
I'm glad to hear that.
it works, but it takes, but again, it's the tools we already have, the work we're already doing, and it allows us to be more efficient about it. That feels good, right?
But it also is gonna take your support, because I think that's, we heard that, we can't do one and done.
Yeah.
That has been happening since the moment I came here, I'll be honest, it's like one and done, and you get whiplash. And we can't do that, that's not what's right for our kids, and it sure isn't right for our staff.
And
So-
you had concerns about this program, nothing new is in education, they just recycle it on a 20-year thing, call it something different. But, the first thing, I realized is a lot of the stuff that we are shown, parts of that is already being done on the district. You can talk to Margie Bradython. Maria Carrillo has been having, an amazing advisory resource thing, what is that, Brittany?
Which study spot.
Right, they've been doing that for years. And that's this, so this
That's
is
tier
just intentional.
And so a couple things, I'm sorry.
No, you, yeah,
What I heard is that you gotta be, you have at least a 6-year window for implementation, get up to speed. So you already know that, right? Then we're going into year two.
But you're gonna have to
But
look
we
at
got
the
some of them.
year one.
Exactly, because we have all these other people that are coming along, right?
Yeah.
So the people that have been are gonna leave the rest
Yes.
along. So we know we have a 6-year window, right? So we've committed to that. The other question I have, sorry, is more of a personal ask. Can I get a copy of your RTI work pyramid that you've done? Because I'd like to be able to have it as a reference as I see one of these, so I get a better understanding. And, because I did work for actually 8 different sheriffs or 9 sheriffs. I don't know, I had a lot of sheriffs, and they all want to do something different, and it drove me crazy. But I was there 32 years and it drove me nuts, because every new boss had something new to do.
Yeah.
It drove me nuts, so.
Do you have access to the Elsie Allen Drive?
Don't know if I do or not, but we can find out, so we can share.
I was gonna say,
Or if you wanna send me a link, we can,
I
I
was
can
gonna say,
share it
I'll
out.
text DJ and Casey.
This won't be our last session on this.
No.
Yeah.
But I do, so we can share that so you can actually like see through and, but something else I wanna mention is going back to the pyramid. All students, all teachers, all guiding coalitions, every single breathing being on campus is doing tier 1. Tier 2, half of it, it's still teachers. So the part where a lot of teachers are gonna say, oh my God, this is too much work.
Yes.
Babe, you're already doing half of this in your classroom already. It's just not systemized. Yeah, I know. Sorry. I hang out with teenagers too much. It's just not systemized. So we're our own little island. And yeah, when you ask me to do too much and I'm still on my own, I'm not gonna wanna do it because how am I supposed to?
Or you're gonna get
do
burned
it?
out, right?
How am
Trying
I
to keep
supposed to do
up.
it? So here you see that it's also red for Guiding Coalition. So we are actively working on systemizing not only academic, but behavior as well. So yes, this is a lot. It is super overwhelming to look at. And I will say that for the Elsie Allen team specifically, our first year, we felt like we were drowning because we didn't see the big picture. It wasn't until year 2 that we saw the big picture. And I need that in order to go through. So that's why I want to keep bringing that up. But then if you look at the very bottom of the pyramid, this is our super intensive, and you will see there is no green. This is not for teachers. We are now looking at specialties and specialists, because teachers, they are already doing the work that they need to do. And if a student is still not able to get there, the work that teachers are trained to do, well then yeah, there is a gap, and that's where we're gonna come up and support those students every single day. This is not a once a week like group. This is not once a month. This is every single day. We're built into the schedule, built into teacher contracts. We are not asking you to teach another prep. We are asking you to reteach, or we are having reading specialists come in. We are having our speech pathologists come in. This is sometimes where you see more of that ESN level special ed, not so much the mild moderate special ed, which is where you see in tier 1, tier 2.
But there's also going to be tier 3 behavior intervention, not pull out, not after school. It's built into the day, social skills, whatever needs to be done to support that small group.
So I wanted you to have that background understanding so that hopefully that also makes a lot more sense of where we're going. We have not really been trained too much on behavior. Amy and I went to a train, and Gabby, you were there too. No.
Are you done?
Okay, Gabby's been doing a lot of work.
We are a bit past time. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go Omar really quickly and then we'll wrap up. This is something that are working on and pursuing. We'll figure out how to officially codify that support and create the timeline and the certainty you're looking for. But I think one of the things that as a board, we've been very clear about is looking for a way to create teacher leadership at sites where we're not saying you have to do everything the same way everywhere, but where you're actually meeting each and every student's needs. And so, how we need to officially say that on an agenda in the future, we'll figure that out. But know that your work is incredibly valuable, and it's really what I believe we need for the future. So, Omar, I'll go up to you.
Thank you. My Emma started kind of getting into what my question is about, and that's around the role of classified. I think the PDs that are happening at the beginning of the year, that's for both certificated and classified, if I'm not wrong. And so clarification on that question. And secondly, throughout the year, I know you talked about staff meetings, but is that focused within just the teachers meeting together, or is classified staff a part of that process in making all of this work as a community on the campus?
So Omar, I can speak from at the last professional development day, our classified staff did work on this, and because everyone interacts with students and it's part of the intervention process that takes place on campuses. And some of the specific work they did is like, they determined like a code of standards and conducts for the peer tutors and the people that work in the offices and support them there. And they're also a part of part of the tier 1 behavior standards is about how we interact with people and how we support those day-to-day interactions and operational behaviors with our students. And so everyone that's interacting with students should be a part of developing the expectations for how students are going to conduct themselves while they're on campus. And I actually felt that I went to check on them because we sequestered the different groups to different areas, and we need 20 more minutes, we're almost done with this thing. And they're really excited about the work they had been doing. And in my opinion, was one of the few times that they felt really included within the development that was going on.
So that's the question around, I get that they do all that stuff, but in terms of you guys mentioned in the SRTA contract, they have the 21 hours. Does classified have something similar where they're being compensated for the work that they do? Is that already included, or how does that all work?
I think so. How it's worked at our site is that depending on the classified's hours, they come in and they push into our staff meeting. So they are definitely there with our staff to be able to, you know, work through the PLT process and understanding like, okay, what is the target? What are the essential standards? What's the goal? How am I going to support and partner up with you? Because it is a collective responsibility. So anytime that we can collectively meet and collectively work together, that is the work that we have continuously trying to do and influence in getting people together to be able to do that. It gets tricky because some of them are not full one FTE. It's like 0.2, 0.7, 0.825, like some classified FTE is very segmented. But when we can have them together and there is that availability, absolutely they're in the room as a collective responsibility for student learning.
Okay, we are much past time, so Tim, I'll give you 1 minute to wrap us up.
No, 15 seconds.
Perfect.
I just wanted to make sure that the board is invited to go to any of the sessions. I know that Lisa, you went to a number of them this year. It's really informative to watch the balance between there's a presentation and then there's application time, and a presentation and application time. And when they leave, they're making plans to go, how do we connect up with the staff? How do we plan for a faculty meeting? Second point is, would it be helpful for the board if we left you some of the resource books that the teachers are using so that you, like, for instance, here's an entire book on guiding coalitions. Here's the book that you're gonna use for year one, the book that's used for year two, a book that's used.
Why don't we
year
get a
three.
library of all of it that we could check out from Melanie? And then
Yeah,
we
you
can all
can
get
just check
access.
out for Melanie.
Yeah.
So it's there.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you all very much for your
you.
time and for your work on this. I'm actually, this is really exciting. This is
exciting.
This is actually what I wanted to be on the school board for, so. Return.